And that's what I am. That's what we all are. We're bags of goo unless we're in God's sustaining current.
Phil,
sorry to call you a bag of goo.
That's okay. I can take it.
I think of you more highly than that. But.
This is one of the new ideas.
Yes, that was actually the first story. God finally got me to a point, because first after the bankruptcy, my first thought was, I'll show them. I'm going to come up with another big idea, and I'll get it all back, and then they'll be sorry. But nothing would come. And I kept reading the Bible, and I kept praying, and I found before long, I didn't care as much anymore. And it felt like a part of me, like something inside me was dying. And it scared me because I wasn't sure what it was that was dying, and then I realized what it was. It was my ambition. It was my dreams, my hopes, my will. When Paul said, I have died, I have been crucified with Christ, and I no longer live, but Christ lives in me. I don't think we really read that verse clearly enough. Say, I no longer live. Well, what does that mean of my dreams?
They're dead.
They're on the altar.
They are laid down.
They're on the altar, and they're dead. And then Christ fills you with his dreams. The mind of God is what we're pursuing, not our own minds, not our own hearts. It's what's on the heart and mind of God. And so I got to a point where I said, okay, God, I'm ready to be done. If that's what you want, I don't need to write anything. And about a week later, I woke up in the middle of the night with something in my head that just God had been impressing on me about my relationship with my wife and what I saw in relationships with others. And I thought, well, that would make a good sermon. So if someone asked me to speak somewhere, I should write that down. But as I was lying in bed, instead of coming to my head as a three-point sermon outline, it came to my head as a story about two pigs in business suits who live right next door to each other but don't know each other's names.
Sidney and Norman.
Sidney and Norman, A Tale of Two Pigs. And I went into work that day, and in about 2 hours, the story was finished. And it just wrote itself. And I came home and I read it to my wife, and when I looked up after I read it to her, she had tears running down both her cheeks. And all I could think was, is this how it's going to work now?
We have to commend your wife because she made a choice not to try to be the Holy Spirit in your life.
Yes.
Through many, many months where she knew something had to give, didn't she?
She could recognize some of the mistakes I was making. She knew that I was backing down from my instincts, near the end when I was trying to keep all these people together. She knew I was letting other people kind of run roughshod over me with some of their own ideas, for what VeggieTales should become. And she also knew that she'd tried earlier in our marriage to be my personal Holy Spirit, and that it didn't go very well. So she actually, one of the key books, and it was a Henry Blackaby study of leadership, study of the life of Samuel. She bought it for me about a year earlier and was about to give it to me, but then realized she was doing it again and put it in a stack of books in our room and just left it there. And exactly when I needed it, I noticed it. And I pulled it out of the stack myself. And the first thing I read in that book...
Take courage, wives at home, take courage.
The first thing I read, this is in the middle of everything falling down around me, was him writing on day one of week one of this study, if what you have told the people you are going to do is not working, it may be because it did not come from God, but from your own head. Okay, he's talking to me. And that was the beginning of God unfolding this entire story.
I wonder if we're stealing too much from this wonderful saga. It's strange to use that word, but it is. Because
story.
It's a God story. It's changed who you are, Phil.
Absolutely.
It was another woman who injected something that she felt was from God.
I was not very good at listening to God because I was just so busy. I was so stinking busy trying to work for him that I didn't have time to listen to him, which is just lunacy. So he chose some other people to speak to me for him. And several of them were women, were wives of the people that worked for me, that we prayed with, that were good friends with my wife, that would send me emails and send me key little things that God was telling them.
And how did you wrap things up with Walt?
I realized that for lack of my own identity, I decided, I would be Walt Disney. Because everybody loved Walt Disney, and that's really what I wanted. I wanted to be loved like Walt Disney. I wanted to be creative like Walt Disney. I wanted to be looked up to like Walt Disney. And I got an email from a wife of one of our artists who, during her times of prayer, God would give her mental pictures for people. She said, I have a picture for you. And I thought, okay, this is weird, because that's not really from my Christian experience. It's these pictures from God. She said, it's of you as a little boy at Disneyland, and you're lost and you're looking for your father. And I was like split in two. Immediately, I realized that for most of my life, I'd been a little kid at Disneyland looking for his father. I thought, well, that's really depressing. Thanks. And then about 2 months later, I didn't know what to do, so I just kind of set it aside. About 2 months later, she wrote me again and said, I was praying this morning and God gave me a new picture. She said, it's of you. You're at Disneyland again. You're a little boy, but you're on Jesus' shoulders, and you're having the time of your life. And I thought, that sounds great. It doesn't feel true yet, but it sounds great. About a year later, after I'd figured all this out, after God had unwrapped this mystery, I went to Disneyland. I said, I just need to go and make my peace with Walt and put this down. And as I walked around, I finally sat down next to the statue of Walt in the center. And I just thought about this 10 years of trying to roll a rock up a hill that God never asked me to roll. I thought about all the people that had helped, but then had been hurt because I'd had to lay them off because I'd made promises I couldn't keep. And a woman and her daughter, out of the corner of my eye, I saw them walking up to me with a camera. I thought, oh, great, I've been spotted. They're fans. And they walked to me, would you take a picture of us next to Walt? Yeah, and they wanted Walt. They didn't want me. And I just stood up, and I thought, okay, it's so fitting. I'm not Walt. I'm Phil. And I don't know exactly who that is, but you know what? That's okay. Because where I am in 5 years is none of my business. And I walked out of Disneyland thinking, okay, this is going to be good. And for the first time in my life, I felt like I was on Jesus' shoulders, having the time of my life.
Phil, I want to thank you for all the Veggie tales.
You're welcome.
But this is the best story. And I want to encourage folks to take the journey with you, because it's so rich. And although I'm losing it here, it's funny on every single page. And it is so precious. And the life lesson is that God knows what he's doing with our lives. And he's far more interested in who we're becoming than anything we'll ever do for him. And we can trust him in the journey, can't we, Phil?
It's not about where it's going to end up. It's not about what my work is going to accomplish. It's about today, am I walking with God? And am I happy even when I'm doing nothing with him?
I hope you get to tell this story in lots of ways and places. And we'll keep watching for Sydney and Norman and other Jellyfish productions.
Yep. Thank you.
God bless you.
Thank